All right, boys, welcome. Girls, also welcome. Another strength day. Today I'm going to be lowering the intensity and upping the volume. I don't think I've plateaued on legs, but I just want to try this out. I have plateaued hard on a couple other things, so I want to see if doing that method is going to give me better results. I also will be talking about and sharing my feelings on regret. I'm fortunate enough to where I kind of naturally don't struggle with regret. There's one thing in my life that I do regret in the somewhat recent past. So I'll share that with you. If it's something that you struggle with, then stick around. Maybe I can give you some tips on how you can not struggle with it anymore. Another reason why I wanted to lower the intensity a little bit is because I have been losing some body fat. I'm going to the beach in a couple of weeks, going to Kiowa Island. It's really nice. If you ever have the opportunity to go there, it's in South Carolina, you should definitely go. It's gated though, so it's a little bit hard to get into. I'm lucky enough to where my wife has the connection to get in. It's not like I'm rich enough to get in there or anything like that. But yeah, I feel like I've gotten a little weaker since I have been cutting down on some body fat. I don't know, you're going to the beach. It's hard for me to want to bulk up and continue strength training if I'm going to the beach. I also just hate bulking. I hate putting body fat on places where I feel like there shouldn't be any body fat. Maybe you would call that insecurity. I would agree with you. Maybe you would call that body dysmorphia. I wouldn't go that far, but hey, label me however you want. I don't really care. I'm putting myself out there so you can say whatever you want about me. My RPE is probably a little bit higher on these than they should be. I'm probably around a 7, but that's okay. I like to push myself a little bit. Feels good to push myself. Everybody in strength training or powerlifting community says, oh yeah, you don't want to go too hard. That's not how you build strength, but I haven't been strength training for very long, so it's hard for me to overcome that. Back on the subject of body fat, I tell you, one of the worst feelings in the world to me, and this is so pathetic and petty, but whatever, I'm just being honest with you, is when I get into my work vehicle and I put on my seatbelt and I just feel like there's that extra bit of belly fat that's hanging over the seatbelt. I hate that feeling. I hate it if it's going over my belt, even just a little bit, and it's only if I'm like sitting down. It's not like I have the gut to, have it going over on a regular basis. I don't know how anyone can stand that. It's funny, especially with females, but I've noticed it more among guys too. Just the strategy to just pull it up over that lower belly fat. That doesn't help. That doesn't make it feel any better. It just it tucks it in, but then it's just like tighter for the exposure of the roll. I don't know. Just watch what you eat and work out. You can do it. If you're the one that pulls the pants up, leave them down. That's motivation. Motivation's good. Desire is good if it makes you better yourself. If you that's one key that I use in order to continue making sure that I eat healthy and work out on a regular basis is sometimes you just kind of make yourself uncomfortable. It's like sometimes if I'm slacking on cardio or if I notice that I am eating poorly, I will come back the next day and do a really heavy cardio workout, specifically HIIT stuff, because it makes me feel like crap. I eat junk and then the next day I feel it. So it gives me that visceral reminder that we all need sometimes to not do that again, at least for a couple weeks, because I'll do it again. I get weak, I get tired, I make bad decisions, so whatever, it's no big deal. But, if tighter shirts bother you because you feel fat, maybe wear that tighter shirt and it might motivate you to go to the gym that day or not eat that extra donut. I don't know. Despite wanting to train strength, I have been feeling like I need to kind of cut back on my eating a little bit. And I couldn't do it. I felt that way for months. And then all of a sudden I plan a beach trip and then, what do you know? It's easy to intermittent fast for 16 hours all of a sudden, and it's easier to not eat that extra thing at night. So those little painful reminders are very, very valuable as long as you don't let them get too big. We want to keep them little, and we want to go after them. Don't let them sit. 3, 4, 5. I think that's actually a pretty good segue into talking about regret, because that's when you let it get too big. So like I said before, I don't know what it is. I think a lot of it has to do with my dad's influence. My dad has always had a pretty good attitude and been a naturally happy guy. And happy people usually don't have regrets. And if they do, they don't let them eat them away like a lot of people would. But I've been fortunate. I really haven't felt like I've ever regretted anything up until the last couple months. And ironically, the only thing I regret is not sticking with the YouTube channel that I started almost 3 years ago. Next month will be 3 years now. Because, I don't know, you listen to anyone that has a successful YouTube channel, they talk about how much it changes your life regardless of what your numbers are after 2 years of doing it. So at this point, I would have been 3 years in. But even that's just like a minor regret. It would be nice if I could be closer to my goals now, obviously, than just kind of restarting with this YouTube channel 3 months ago. But on the flip side of that, now that I'm started up again and I'm doing these, I have all sorts of self-doubt and stuff. I don't really care. That's normally just the voice in your head that you can't shut up unless you're a monk or Buddha or something, which would be nice. I don't want to go meditate for 8 hours a day, but maybe it's worth it. Who knows? Go talk to a monk about it if you want to know. But the important thing is the thought of quitting this doesn't even cross my mind. It's just a matter of, okay, I've got to do this. I've decided to do this. I want to do it. I enjoy doing it. So just keep doing it regardless of what happens, and then try and push aside the noise of, oh, well, I don't have enough subscribers. I'm not getting very many views. You can go compare yourself to other YouTube channels that have been doing it for the amount of time that you've been doing it, and you can see how many views they had. I don't recommend doing that. I have made that mistake while doing this. Going and looking at channels that have been posting videos for 3 months now, like I have, but they have 50,000 subscribers. Now, granted, they deserve it. They put a lot more effort into their videos, and they have a different style of videos than what I'm going for here. But try not to compare yourself to anyone else if you are doing this. Just do your thing. Commit to it for a long period of time. Understand that you're going to be doing it for years and years. And even if the original goal that you set out for is not what you get to, you don't know what kind of benefits you'll have other than that. There's pros and cons to anything. You know, pro to regret is that if you do manage to go back to something similar or to that thing that you quit before, then it's going to be a big reminder, a big thorn in your side that you don't want to quit again. So this is my theory on why I think a lot of people struggle with regret and it really affects their lives. I think people forget that they are a different person in the present than they were in the past. And I actually think that is a lack of empathy with yourself that you have regret most of the time. You know, there's special, not necessarily special circumstances, but you're in different circumstances. And even in hindsight, when you go back and look, oh yeah, it was stupid that I would rather play video games than work on my future. You know, you can feel that way all that you want, but I think there was a reason that you played video games in that time as opposed to working on your future. It could be that you were just stressed to the max, and maybe all you needed to do to cope with day-to-day things is just go play some video games. So, yeah, I mean, the self-help guys and the guys that are super successful are like, what are you doing? Playing video games is not going to fix your problems. And of course they're right, you know, unless you are figuring out the mental stuff and realizing that money and wealth and success doesn't really matter. It's more important, in my opinion, to have self-worth and happiness and love. But, you know, we want it all. I want it all. I'm human. You know, I feel like I've done a good job with the happiness and relationships and stuff. So now I'm working on the financial side of things. But anyway, I don't think people empathize with their past selves very well at all. Even going back and looking at the thing that I regret, It was a pretty stressful time in my life when I quit the past channel, even though it didn't feel like it at the time. My father-in-law had to have a stem cell transplant because he had leukemia, and you know, it's really, really scary. Also, this was 3 years ago, so COVID was still pretty unknown, and my father-in-law at the time was in his late 60s. And reports back then were coming in like, oh yeah, I mean, if you're old and you're getting COVID, you're just gonna die. So if you don't know, when you have a stem cell transplant, it just shatters your immune system. You actually have to go back and get back all your vaccines that you got as a child again. So he had that transplant, immune system's destroyed, and he gets COVID. And he gets COVID while he's at my house. He came to stay with me and my wife because his family had COVID, and we were hoping that he wasn't gonna get it. So I'm doing these videos. At the time, I'm getting up at like 5 in the morning, you know, writing, spending a couple hours a day working on the videos. Like, it was either work, family, or working on the videos. So I was all into it, you know, that whole YouTube self-help spiel stuff. So he comes over, he gets COVID, and I have to take him to the hospital at like 12 o'clock at night. And I even say to my wife at the time, like, you need to say goodbye. This could be the last time that you see him. And that was scary. That was really scary, but I was in a pretty good headspace at the time, and so it wasn't affecting me in the moment. But I take him to the hospital. I end up getting COVID from him. My wife and daughter get COVID from him as well, and it just like shut me down. If you've had COVID at a decently severe level, not super severe, but it, you know, it's pretty debilitating. You just want to sleep. You don't have any energy or anything like that. So that experience started, and I was out for about a week. And whatever it was, I was going hard for 3 months. And then that week with COVID just like shut me off. I was just done. And I didn't even register it initially. It was one of those things where I was like, yeah, there's no way I won't go back to doing the videos. And then a week goes by, and 2 weeks, and a month. And then all of a sudden I haven't done anything. And it's like, now I'm judging my past self, thinking, oh, well, the fact that I was trying to better myself was stupid, and the fact that I was trying to make those videos never would have worked out or anything, you know, just all that noise that helps justify your decisions. So maybe I should take a little bit more of my own advice and have more empathy for my past self, but it really just depends on the situation, I think. Right now, it kind of serves me a little bit to regret that, because it's going to help me stick with what I'm trying to do now, and it's good to have that fire. You know, if you know about the carrot and the stick analogy, you want to have that carrot in front of you so that you're chasing something, and you want that stick behind you so you have something pushing you towards a goal. That's the best way, in my experience, of limited accomplishments to accomplish something. I have a really hard time properly engaging my glutes in those squats. It's just awkward to do. You know, you're bending over and coming out of it, so it's hard to keep the tension on the squats or on the glutes, but it's definitely something I need to practice. Fuck. So I discovered that I absolutely suck at overhead press. So when I'm doing these, if it looks like I'm staring at the camera like a demon, it's because I'm trying to watch myself in this little teeny tiny camera that I have facing me on the side over here. But I've had to really go down on weights on this because, man, I was all sorts of like crooked and offset when I was doing those. So, you know, you should do this with everyone, but take anything I say with a grain of salt. You know, I'm just a guy trying to figure things out for myself too. So, you know, if you like what I say, maybe go try it, go apply it. You know, whether it's the fitness or the mindset stuff. Question what I say though, because I'm just trying to learn myself. With all that being said, here's something you should definitely do. No, I'm just kidding. But another thing that I think has helped me a lot with a lack of regret in my life is the belief that everyone really is just trying to do the best that they can. That literally goes for everyone in my belief. You know, if there's a guy out there that commits a vicious murder or something like that, yeah, it's awful and it's easy to hate on the guy, and you know, he deserves it in a sense. He ruined somebody's life, and through by extent, he ruined a lot of people's life most of the time, including his own. But what has happened in that guy's life to lead up to that point? I have no idea if that guy had been assaulted sexually as a kid. You know, how often do you hear those stories of where we actually get to hear the stories of people that do atrocious things? They usually have something atrocious happen to them in their past, and it's just, you know, that cycle of hate. You know, if you watch any anime, they all talk about that essentially. But it's a good point. Why would I assume that I would do any better in his shoes or her shoes than they did themselves? One thing that I really enjoy listening to Jordan Peterson talking about is, if I'm remembering correctly, him saying that the odds of you being a Nazi soldier, if you were in the regime, if you'd grown up in Germany, the odds of you being the guy that's like, oh, I wouldn't have done that. I would have definitely, you know, hid Anne Frank in my attic. It's a good chance that you wouldn't, because most of those guys didn't do it either. And to assume that you would think, or to assume that you would do differently in their situation despite being in the exact same situation is just false. I don't believe that for a second. But we are human, we are flawed. It's really, really hard to navigate this life and this world. You know, we do things that we think are good, only to find out later on that they weren't the best for you and you made a bad decision. So there's all these variables in life that push you in directions that you might not even understand until you got there and you're already past it. So even if you feel like you're making bad decisions on a daily basis, well, maybe at the time that's just the best that you can do. And recognition of that, I think, is an important thing to do, because if you've got that self-awareness, then that's the first step into being able to make the changes that you need to, assuming you want to. But that belief obviously ties into empathy. You know, if it's easier to empathize with people, strangers, yourself, if you genuinely believe that everyone is just doing the best that they can. I've had some bad relationships in my own family. There's, you know, I don't talk to my mom. I've had long periods of time where I haven't talked to my brother. And I've never stopped loving them. I just have had to separate myself from them at times because it was clear that they were just bringing me down. Unfortunately, you know, I do have a relationship with my brother at this point, but like I said, I'm still not talking to my mom. She was just kind of like a black hole, just sucking energy and sucking happiness out of my life and everyone in my family's life. But that whole time, I do genuinely believe that she has done the best that she can in her life. I don't understand mental issues. I don't know if she has mental issues. One way that I look at it is trying to identify spectrums that we haven't actually been able to identify yet. And obviously that's something that society is trying to do. But, you know, I have a brother-in-law that's mentally handicapped, you know, and he has to be in special needs because he just can't do things for himself. And then you have most of the people that you know in your life that are just normal functioning human beings. So what's everything in between that? And I don't want to cop out my mom and the decisions that she's made by saying, well, maybe she's just got mental health issues. But it is a way to empathize. You know, maybe she just has something that I wasn't able to identify or other people were not able to identify. And if that's a way that you need to look at things in order to help cope with it, then I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think if you need to twist your own story or your image of somebody else in order to have more empathy for yourself, or other people, I don't think there's anything wrong with that either. As much as it feels like it, reality is not set in stone. There's plenty of science that backs up that theory. So if you need to twist and change narratives in your mind in order to have more empathy for people and in order to better yourself, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So if I have to tell myself that, yeah, maybe my mom does have mental issues in order to be able to feel love for her and empathize with her, then I don't see any problem with that. Nope. Right there. Right there. I don't care what weight you're using, but if you're doing it slow and controlled and trying to do it with good form and you do it for long enough, you're going to feel a burn. Another belief that I have is that regret actually can be a very good thing. It's not something that you want to hold on to for a long period of time. You know, we got the Uncle Rico, Napoleon Dynamite stories out there where it's just like, man, if I would have played quarterback in high school, my life would have changed. And those worthless regrets that just eat you up for your whole life, those aren't the good ones. But regret can be good if it helps push you towards the thing to resolve your regret. So again, just going back onto these YouTube channels for myself, I viewed the current regret as a good thing because I'm using it as fuel to try and push past it in a new positive direction. So I think it's good to use kind of like a rocket burner or whatever it's called to help get the rocket launched off the ground. And then at some point you want to let it go. You just want to let it get you into that atmosphere, the stratosphere, outer space, however you want to call it, and then let it go. Because I don't believe that regret serves you in the long term. It is a negative feeling. It's not a good feeling. But if you can use it to propel yourself into a better life and feeling better about yourself in the long run, then I think it's a positive when you put that kind of spin on it. Having the ability to twist your own self-narrative is such a powerful tool, obviously when it comes to regret, but just when it comes to anything. It's so easy for us to create negative narratives about ourselves that are highly, highly unlikely, if not totally unlikely, to be untrue. There's probably something, if you're similar to me, where you do struggle with a lot of that negative self-talk, something I'm clearly trying to work on. But I bet there's something, if you're like that, that's happened to you within the last week, where maybe you were nervous about confronting someone, because that's a big one for me. Sometimes I get nervous about even approaching a conversation where I feel like there's potential for confrontation. And then you go and you do it, and then it's no big deal, and there was no confrontation or anything like that. We've all had experiences like that, where there's just this noise that goes on that just doesn't need to be there, and it is there. You know, if you want to blame evolutionary theory or whatever, then go do that. I don't really care what the reason is. I just know that I want to get rid of it. And I don't want it to be there anymore because it doesn't serve me, and I don't want anything in my life that doesn't serve me. Yeah, that makes me sound like a master. Maybe I am. Maybe I'm like Charlie Kirk, and I'm need to be a master debater. If you've watched the South Park episode that came on last week, then you would have gotten that. If not, maybe you would have just laughed at the fact that I said master debater, and I got to steal content from South Park. Oh, I want to lift heavy on these bench press, but I need to lower the weight, so I'm going to. Too high of an RPE. So as frustrating as it is to take a break from the strength training, it is good for me, I think, to kind of get back to just working on some basics. I was just pushing new PRs every week pretty hard, and because I'm relatively new to strength training aspect of weightlifting, I do think I was making a lot of mistakes. One of them being I have a tendency on my bench press to flare my elbows out too much instead of keeping the wrist stacked over the elbows, which definitely does lose power if you're not doing that. I'm also playing with my grip a little bit. I did like it a little bit narrower than what I have been doing lately. Most of my bench pressing I've done with just a little bit wider than shoulder length width, but now I'm going even wider than that. I notice a lot of power lifters go pretty wide. It does make sense, obviously, in terms of bar path. You know, you're not having to push the bar as far if you go wider, but it also does just help engage the chest more. I also have a tendency to not keep my shoulders tucked down and back. You know, I think as I start getting tired during my bench press, my shoulders starting to flatten more up against the bench, and obviously I'm losing drive doing that too. For some reason, it's specifically my right shoulder that I have a hard time keeping tucked. So, being a beginner with all this, you gotta learn all those things. I don't have a personal trainer, so I'm trying to figure it all out myself by watching myself on camera and just watching professionals on YouTube talk about it. Although I have to be careful with that, because then I start comparing my content to theirs and my YouTube numbers to theirs, and that's a rabbit hole I don't want to go down. But hey, just having fun with this. What do you know, on this fitness channel, I'm actually talking about fitness related things for once. If you haven't been watching my previous videos, I kind of have a tendency to not talk too much about fitness. I just kind of show you what I'm doing and that's it. Because I'm still trying to learn a lot about fitness. That was another reason why I wanted to start this channel, is so that it'll help push me to learn new things. But hey, I'm actually talking about fitness this time. And on the flip side of what I was talking about earlier about hating that, you know, as you start getting that extra belly fat that's going over your seatbelt or your belt or whatever, the opposite side of that is, man, if you're losing weight and those abs start popping out a little bit on you, that is a very, very good feeling. That's definitely the ego talking in me. I shouldn't enjoy that as much as I do, but you know, my wife does tend to look a little bit more when that's the case, so you know, it is reinforced at least. But as someone who spent most of their life as either skinny fat or just kind of fat, it's a good feeling to finally have those abs kind of pop a little bit. And if I had more confidence, maybe I would show you. But I don't want to get roasted by you on YouTube for saying, what abs are you even talking about? I can't see them. Well, you're just going to have to take my word for it that there's at least 4 of them there. Now, another one of my beliefs is that comparison is only the thief of joy if you attach negative emotions to it, which is obviously not a part of the saying. It's not quite as catchy, but it does make more sense. I can compare myself to people and not attach negative emotions to it and just be like, oh, I want to lift as much as that guy. What does it take to do that? Just, you know, have that curious approach to it. But those times when I don't have the negative self-talk, it's amazing going on YouTube and seeing these guys that weigh like 40 pounds less than me, able to bench more than my deadlift. And it would be nice to try and get somewhere within that realm, although I don't think I ever want to, and now that I say it out loud, I probably don't have the drive to, or the genetics, or willing to take the drugs, whatever it may be. It's still impressive. Alright, well I think that will be it for today. It's hard for me to walk out of here feeling like I can keep lifting and keep pushing, but hey, everybody I listen to says you do not build strength by grinding out reps, so I need to trust that. I need to give it a shot and see how it goes. And just to recap, you know, if regret is something that you struggle with, give what I've talked about a shot, see if it works for you. First point again being just have more empathy for yourself, your past self, and for other people. You know, point 2 or 1.5, I guess, how you look at it, because it ties into empathy. is to just understand that everybody's doing the best that they can with the information and the experiences that they have in the moment, including yourself and your past self. And third, if you can't get rid of the regret, then find a way to make it useful. Let it push you towards that thing that it's telling you that you should go do in order to get rid of the regret. But as always, thanks for sticking around. If you have for this long, I really appreciate it, and I love you. I really, really do. And I'll keep telling you that I love you until you believe me, and until you tell me that you love me too. Either way, see you.